I see they're selling the murder house. Sheila Blanchard calls out to me this morning. The board's gone up, asking 160. I didn't say I knew, or that actually it's sold already. Fran says they're an Asian family. Quite well-to-do. Own a chain of electrical shops. I thought, well, that won't do Marbella any good. Golf with Jimmy Tarbuck takes a knock. I look at him a lot now. This once-upon-a-time spectator. Or maybe still, who knows? Somewhere. And I think, well, sometimes I just think, you dark horse. Other times I think about Fran and get upset. He caught me staring at him the other night, said, "What are you looking at, young lady?" I said predictably, "Nothing." "You've been getting a bit broody lately," he said. And he patted me on the knee. What I was actually thinking was whether all these years he'd been wanting to see me crawl around the room naked on my hands and knees. No worse than bedding out, I suppose. Though if I did it nowadays, I'd have to have my knee pads on. Might take the edge off it a bit. But I think about the collar and lead. Then I think, well, that's what my marriage has been like too. Being jerked along. I mean, what else is Marbella? We never settled on what to call it. That was part of the trouble. The gardens made me quite used to things having a common name and a Latin one. But with sex, neither seemed to suit Henry. Not coming from me, anyway, just got embarrassed. He's no idea I go and see her. I tell him it's the hospice. The farm goes from strength to strength. She's gone commercial with her tomatoes and put her onions in for shows. She's there every free moment. Well, I say free. Except when I say goodbye at the gate, I feel it's me that's going back to prison. Once a month, they let her out for half a day. And we go off for the afternoon and do all sorts. Open gardens, obviously, auctions we've been to, car boot sales, and old churches, which I've never cared much for. But Fran knows all about them. One church in the middle of a field, near to where there'd been a battle. And we sit there in the pew, and she explains all the architectural features. And sometimes I think, I've never been so happy in all my life. She took my arm this last time. just as we were coming down the steps at Fountains Abbey. And when we got to the bottom, she didn't let go. It was just like it was when I was a girl and when a boy did it. Such a bold step, and so meant. And I thought, here I am, strolling arm in arm with someone who's murdered our husband. And I said out loud, I know what this is. And she said, what is it? And I said, it's life. She wasn't feeling too clever today, so we just went and sat in the grounds, and she took my arm again. Going into York next week for a check-up. Thought I might just go and hang around the hospital, on the off chance I might see her. But she'll be with a warder, apparently, so I won't. Gave me this. I've never had to start a garden from scratch before. There are no features at all. Flat, square, stony. It's like one of the before pictures in the gardening magazines. Or an exercise yard. A lawn's pretty much out of the question in this heat, and the water supply is very quixotic. Though Henry says the greens at the golf club are immaculate, and he saw Sean Connery last week. So I sit and look at it and draw plans. Look on it as a challenge, Henry says. You'll crack it, young lady, he says, I know you. She died, did Fran. Lot of toing and froing before they eventually tracked it down. No surprise to either of us. Doctors. It's the first thing that occurs to you and the last thing that occurs to them. By which time it's too late. Oh, it was always too late, Mrs. Horrocks. She was in a hospice at the finish, so I knew the drill. I used to hold her hand. Kiss it. She'd kiss mine. We talked about a little garden centre. Best thing that could have happened, Henry said. Which is when I should have packed my bags. Instead, I just went and sat in the greenhouse for a bit. Typical. He'll sometimes wear one of those caps with big peaks that boys wear. Reckons it's for the sun. Caught him the other day wearing it back to front. Suppose it's known as a new lease of life. There's supposed to be a lot of criminals round here. Bank robbers and such like, who can't go back, so play golf all day. Of course, it's just what would happen in a play. Fran shot him, so she had to pay. Only this place is crawling with people who haven't paid. Unless you count just being here as paying. The gardening books talk about plants that are supposed to like shade. They say they prefer it. I don't believe it. I don't believe anything like shade. Oh, they do perfectly well in the shade, it's true. But give them a bit of sun, and suddenly they come into their own. I sit here at night, listening to the frogs and the crickets. And Henry, whistling under his breath.